What's up, everybody? Today I'm going to be doing a recap of who I think is going to win every playoff series this 2023 MLB Playoffs. I know it's been a while, but let's get into it. Alright, so as you guys can see, the Orioles get the bye for the first round. So as you all can see, the people who get the bye for the first round are the Orioles, the Astros, the Braves, and the Dodgers. Starting off with this first series, this is Rays Rangers. I think this is going to be a pretty good series because both teams had really good regular seasons. The Rangers obviously had a historic offense with Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, Adolis Garcia, Josh Jones, Jonah Heim. Their offense is really legit. But on the pitching side, they don't have much. They traded for Max Scherzer at the trade deadline. He got injured. So their top starters right now are Jordan Montgomery and Nathan Eovaldi. Nathan Eovaldi had a really good first half. He got injured and he's been so ever since. The Rays have a really up and down, like solid roster, despite all the trauma and injuries they've had this year, with the Wander Franco stuff that went on, and then Shane McClanahan, Drew Rasmussen, and Jeffrey Springs all going out with Tommy John surgery. I think this series is going to be closer than people think because I feel like a lot of people got the Rangers moving on. The Rays have a better starting rotation with Tyler Glasnow, who I think is going to be like poised to have a big game. The first game's Tyler Glasnow versus Jordan Montgomery. I think the Rays definitely have the edge in that game. But it's going to be interesting though because of how high powered the Rangers offense is. The Rays are really going to have to count on Yandy Diaz and Randy Arozarena to carry their offense without having Brandon Lau, Wander Franco, or Luke Raley being able to play for them. But I think it's really gonna come down to the bullpen because the Rangers had one of the worst bullpens in the league for most of the year. They consistently blew saves. They had a stretch there where the bullpen did all right, but I don't think at this point in his career, you can trust Chapman to close like a one-run game. Like say there's a few guys on base. You got Randy Rosarena up. I don't think you trust him in that situation at all. I think the part that helps the Rays is that they're an all around very well constructed team. They got some power hitters with Isaac Paredes and Randy Rosarena, and then Yandy Diaz on base machine. But it's gonna be interesting how some of their young guys do because since Wander Franco and Brandon Lowe have come down, they've had to call up Junior Caminero and Curtis Mead, who are both like top 100 prospects, but they're both really new to the MLB. The Rays obviously have a lot more playoff experience than the Rangers. The Rangers also have like a very veteran-led team with Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, Mitch Garver's made the playoffs. But I think with the fact that the Rays have the edge in starting pitching and in the bullpen, I'm gonna go with them, even though the Rangers have a really good offense. Moving on to Twins and Blue Jays. This one, I don't know. I'm big on the Blue Jays. I think that Kevin Gausman, you can really depend on him as a game one starter. And then coming off of that, they still got Chris Bassett, even though Alek Manoah isn't going to be here. But I think Chris Bassett, Kikuchi, I think they got a decent starting rotation. Obviously, the Twins have a good rotation too because that's what they do. They kind of manufacture pitching. They kind of fixed Sonny Gray out, or they made him even better after leaving the Reds. And then trading for Pablo Lopez, he's also been really solid for them. That Luis Rice trade is looking like a win-win trade for both sides. But I think the Blue Jays are the better all-around team. Their offense has just more firepower to me. I think the Twins probably have a better bullpen, but I don't know, I just have trouble seeing the Twins beating the Blue Jays. It's also just the fact of what they've done in the past in the playoffs. Not that the Blue Jays have ever really done anything in the playoffs with some of these guys, but they do have some guys that have made deep playoff runs. Like they got Brandon Belt or Chris Bassett's been in the playoffs multiple times. They got some guys with some decent playoff experience, whereas the Twins haven't won a playoff game since the early 2000s. And then also there's a lot of injury questions surrounding the Twins because like they gave Carlos Correa a big deal in the offseason after all the drama where he's going to go to the Giants or the Mets, and he really hasn't performed up to par. He's been dealing with plantar fasciitis, but like still he's been doing pretty bad this year. And then also Byron Buxton, even though they had him move to DH, he's been like barely playing at all. It just seems like that's like a recurring thing for him. Royce Lewis was one of their young players that came up this year and did really good. He had like four grand slams or something crazy, but I'm not sure if he's gonna be playing. I think he might be playing. He had a hamstring injury like towards the end of the season, but overall, I'm gonna take the Blue Jays just because I think they got a more well-rounded overall team. Their offense with Bo Bichette, Vlad Jr., George Springer, Brandon Belt, Kevin Biggio's been getting hot lately. I think that they're going to take the Twins in that series. Moving on, first series, the National League is going to be Phillies Marlins. I think this one's a pretty obvious pick, no offense to the Marlins, but like with their injuries to Sandy Alcantara and Yuri Perez in the rotation, they just don't have the firepower for me to beat the Phillies. I mean, don't get me wrong, like they made the playoffs, which is like respect to them for doing that. But like their offense and their pitching just doesn't really compare to the Phillies because their number one starter with their injuries to Alcantara and Yuri Perez is probably like Braxton Garrett, whereas actually it's gonna be Jesus Luzardo, but it's gonna be like Jesus Luzardo versus Zach Wheeler, and then like maybe Braxton Garrett versus Aaron Nola. In terms of offense, the Marlins made some good pickups at the trade deadline, getting like Josh Bell and Jake Berger. Luis Arias sprained his ankle too, so like obviously he's gonna play in that game, but like you don't know to what capacity is he gonna be like trying to play through that. But even though they got like Luis Arias, Jazz Chisholm, Jake Berger's been like probably their best hitter since they got him, but like it still doesn't really compare to like all the thump the Phillies have in that lineup. Their lineup's one of the like deepest in baseball. They got like Bryson Stott hitting like seventh or something every night. They got the Phillies lineup is really deep with JT Realmuto, Nick Castellanos, Bryce Harper. So they signed Trey Turner. Kyle Schwarber's having like a crazy year where he's hitting like 40 home runs even though he's batting less than 200. So yeah, I think the Phillies like weakness is their bullpen, but I don't think their weakness is gonna get exposed yet. Like, cause I think these games probably aren't gonna be like super close in terms of the score. Whereas I think the Rays Rangers might come down to like a few runs, which is why I would take the Rays because their bullpen is better. And then moving on to this one, Brewers Diamondbacks. I'm taking the Brewers in this one. This one is like just like Rays Rangers where it could probably go either way. But I'm gonna take Brewers because I don't know. I just like the rotation better. Even though Brandon Woodruff isn't gonna pitch in this wild card series, which is definitely gonna hurt them, I think Corbin Burns and Freddie Peralta can still get the job done. Plus, the Diamondbacks burned Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly in the last weekend of the season to make the playoffs. So their first game is going to be pitched by Brandon Pfaadt, which like is not ideal because that's a rookie who wasn't even doing that great in the regular season, pitching game one of the most important series of the year for you guys. I'm gonna keep it real. The Brewers' offense is not great, but they got lockdown relievers with Devin Williams, Juan Uribe, and like a few other guys that like have been pitching well for them out of the bullpen. Joel Payamps. They got like some nasty relievers. A good rotation. I think if they can just score enough to give themselves a lead, they'll be like in decent shape. But I mean, like their offense isn't great, but Christian Yelich has really had a bounce back here. They've been getting some good production from William Contreras. Willie Adames can run into a few home runs. But like the Diamondbacks still got a shot, even though I'm taking the Brewers, because the Diamondbacks have a lot of like they play really good defense because they got a lot of fast guys on their team. Tommy Pham's done good for them once he got to them at the trade deadline. They obviously got Corbin Carroll, who's been like a probably top rookie in baseball this year. He got like over 30 steals, 25 home runs. he's been a star for them. And they still got like Ketel Marte had a really good bounce back year. Um, Christian Walker is really underrated first baseman for them. All right, so moving on to the division series, we got Orioles Rays. This one is interesting because the Orioles have been so consistent the whole way in the regular season. Even though a lot of people thought they should have added a starting rotation piece in free agency, they still didn't. And then at the trade deadline, a lot of people were hoping maybe like Dylan Cease or Lucas Giolito or what have you, but they really didn't do much. They got Jack Flaherty, but now he struggled towards the end of the regular season. They're gonna move him to the bullpen, and then obviously Felix Bautista, their closer, probably best closer in baseball, tore his UCL, and it was looking like he was ramping up towards coming back at some point in the playoffs, but then they just said he had Tommy John surgery. The Rays have also had a lot of injuries, so this one I feel like it could go either way, but I think I'm gonna take the Orioles. They're just like the more well-rounded team in my opinion. Their offense, like 1 through 9, has been doing it all year. Adley Rutschman, ever since he got called up in the second half of 2022, the Orioles had a really good record. Gunnar Henderson might be AL Rookie of the Year. He's been super good for them. He absolutely like rakes. Anthony Santander has been good for them. This 1 through 9, their lineup's been decent. Like even when Cedric Mullins has been injured, they still picked up the slack. I mean, the Rays, I think if their team was fully healthy, like Brandon Lau was healthy, Shane McClanahan, all those guys, I might take the Rays. But in the current state, I think the Orioles have a well-rounded team. Even though they don't have like a true like ace type pitcher to pitch game one, it's probably gonna be like Kyle Bradish or something. Which like there's nothing wrong with that. It's just like not I like compared to the other teams' number one starters, it's not as good. But I still have them winning because they have a more well-rounded team in my opinion. Moving on to Blue Jays Astros. This one's interesting because the Astros like really struggled towards the end of the year, but a lot of people think that they've just made the playoffs so many years in a row that they're like the regular end of the regular season has been becoming like a drag for them, like kind of like those like dynasty Yankees teams where like they're just getting tired of playing the regular season. They can't really get up for those games like they used to. So they just care more about the playoffs now. But I feel like this is a decent matchup. I mean, the Astros have a lot of playoff experience, like more than the Blue Jays do, but this would be an interesting matchup. I think that the Astros probably have the advantage on their starting rotation with having Justin Verlander and then Framber Valdez. The Blue Jays have a really good uh, pitching rotation in their own right. I think this one's kind of a toss-up, but I'm going to go Blue Jays. I think they just like feel like this is their year to like finally make a deep run. The Astros could still do it because they've been having they still have all their players from like their team last year pretty much. Like Michael Brantley's even come back from shoulder surgery. They still got Yordan Alvarez, Jose Altuve. They signed Jose Abreu. Jimmy Pena's still being decent for them. And even their rookie catcher, Yainer Diaz, has been pretty good. But I just got a feeling about the Blue Jays in the playoffs this year. Now we go on to Braves Phillies. This is a rematch of last year where the Phillies upset the Braves and shocked the world. I mean, Charlie Morton's not going to be pitching in this series with a sprained finger. And then Max Fried is on the injured list, but he's supposed to come back for this series with blisters. So the top Braves pitchers they're going to have is going to be Spencer Strider, Max Fried, and then they don't know about Game 3 because this series is best of 5 instead of the first series being best of 3. So I think that having a good like Game 3 starter could be important, and you don't know to what capacity those blisters are going to affect Max Fried. So I predict the Phillies upset the Braves the second year in a row. Even though the Braves have had an all-time offensive season, I just feel like there's something about the Phillies. They just like know how to beat the Braves in the playoffs. Like their team just seems to have really good chemistry. I don't know, like something about like Bryce Harper in Philly when the lights are brightest. I feel like he just turns it on in the playoffs, and I think Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola can do just as good as like Spencer Strider and Max Fried can. So like this series is probably gonna be like a good like pretty long series. Even though the Braves are favored and they've been like by far the most dominant team in the regular season, their offense is really hard to get out with Eddie Rosario, Ronald Acuna, Austin Riley, Michael Harris, Ozzy Albies, even Sean Murphy. They traded for him. Matt Olson hit over 50 home runs and set this franchise record. This is gonna be a good series, I think. But I just got a feeling about the Phillies this year over the Braves. And then moving on to the last round of the second round, this is gonna be Brewers Dodgers. This series is like a rematch of like this is I think this is would be the third time it's happened in like the last 5 years. Both other two times the Dodgers have beat the Brewers, but this year the Dodgers have a lot like less rotation depth than they have had in past years. Um, in terms of like Walker Bueller had Tommy John, they thought he might come back. He's not going to come back. Urias had the domestic violence stuff, so their like playoff rotation would probably be. They said Kershaw's going to pitch game one. Probably game two would be Bobby Miller, who's one of their top prospect rookies. He's been decent, but it's hard to predict how a rookie will do in the first start in the playoffs. And then Lance Lynn as their game three starter, which is kind of so-so because he had a really good start with the Dodgers, and then he started giving up home runs just like he did in Chicago, and it's kind of been like iffy since then because he led MLB in the regular season in like most home runs given up. The Brewers got Corbin Burns and Freddie Peralta. At this point, Brandon Woodruff has some sort of shoulder injury that like they said he's gonna be out for the first round, but if they made it this far, he might be back by then, but I'm not sure. So the Dodgers obviously clear in offense. Like their top three in the order is like probably like up there with the Braves in terms of like Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith. Freddie Freeman got like around 60 doubles this season, which was like almost an NL record. And then Mookie Betts had an all-time season. Him and Acuna were like going back and forth for MVP. He had like 40 home runs as a leadoff hitter, which is absolutely crazy. He was playing shortstop, right field, second base. He was playing all the positions this year, so respect to him for that. I don't know. This Dodger team, it feels like they have less star power than they've had in past years, where like maybe other trade deadlines they traded for like a Manny Machado or Max Scherzer and Trey Turner. This feels like less stacked of a Dodger team. So it's kind of hard to say because those other teams that were more stacked fell short. So if you think like is it possible they might make it farther just because those other teams had more star power and they still didn't get the job done? Um, so I got the Dodgers winning this series. I just think that the Brewers offense can't keep up with the Dodgers offense. And that the if Brandon Woodruff isn't back for the series, that's really gonna affect the Brewers rotation, and the Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman and even Jason Hayward's had a really good year for them. Max Muncy's got like 35 home runs and a like good OPS. So I think that how deep the Dodgers lineup is without Brandon Woodruff, that's really gonna cause the Brewers rotation to have some problems. So moving on to the ALCS, this is Orioles Blue Jays. This is a battle of the birds, I guess, but these teams are pretty even matchups. I think the Orioles were really good throughout the regular season, but in terms of a 7 game series, I don't really know if they have quite the rotation to stack up with the Blue Jays rotation, but their offenses are pretty comparable. The Orioles might have a slightly better offense, and in terms of pitching, the Orioles had a better bullpen towards the beginning of the season when they had Bautista and Cano together as that combo, but Romano's been pretty good for the Blue Jays throughout the year, so they're pretty comparable there. And then the Orioles, since they're the number one seed, they have the home field advantage for the series, for the 7 game series, so they have more home games. Um, I got the Blue Jays because I just think that they have more depth and the rotation that they can turn to. Even Ryu came back towards the end of the year for them, and their offenses are comparable. I like the Blue Jays rotation better for like a 7 game series with Kevin Gosman, Kikuchi, Bassett, and Ryu. Moving on to Phillies Dodgers, this one would be like interesting if it happened. Because I think that the Dodgers have probably a better like top 2 or 3 hitters than the Phillies, but like the Phillies have an overall deeper lineup, and then I think the Phillies probably got a better rotation than the Dodgers with their like 1-2 combo of Nola and Wheeler, and then the Dodgers probably have a better bullpen. And then obviously better defense, and Schwarber and Castellanos can be liabilities in the outfield. But I think that the Phillies are gonna make another run back to the World Series. So I got Phillies over Dodgers. I just feel like eventually having a lot of rookies pitch a lot of your postseason innings out of the rotation with Bobby Miller's obviously gonna be one of their starters. But even after that, the other starters in a 7 game series, you're gonna need like more people to step up. And I don't know if guys like Emmett Sheehan, Michael Grove, or can really like step up to the challenge in their like first taste of playoff baseball. So I got the Phillies moving on to go second year in a row in the World Series. And so my World Series matchup is Blue Jays Phillies. I think this would be like a underrated like fun matchup. I think that the Phillies are like pretty slept on this year in terms of contenders, because like you already got the Braves and Dodgers as like the two top contenders in the National League. So I think the if the Phillies can like escape through like the Braves and Dodgers, they can probably get through anybody, and their confidence would be like at like an all-time high. Their rotation, after Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler would probably be like Rangers Suarez and like Lorenzen or Taiwan Walker, so they still got some depth there. I think their offenses are like the Phillies have a better offense. It's just like a deeper lineup. I think that this would probably be a close one, but I gotta give the Phillies the edge over the Blue Jays, which would mean that my prediction is the Phillies to win the World Series. Phillies over Blue Jays. Comment down below what you think about my prediction.